All right. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to painting with the Arctic Panda, although I am not the Arctic Panda. I have good connections with the Arctic Panda. Um, my name is Natasha McCagg, and I have been teaching some of the kids yoga um, classes for Aboriginal Sports Circle, and I am teaching, doing a fill-in and teaching this session as well. And just a little word about why me, and not the amazing Arctic Panda. So I have a art background and a yoga background and a movement background. I find Northerners have a very eclectic toolbox of skills that they collect over the years. But I also use art as a way to build bridges with kids. And I've also taken art in university as well. And so I have a collection of things that I'm going to show because I wasn't sure who would sign on or if people would sign on today. I am joined though by a couple of painters, a couple of artists that are sitting at the other end of the dining room table for me, but they want to remain off camera. So they've already moved on and they're doing their own collective painting and just you may not even hear a peep from them because I find when people start to paint or create, sometimes they get really engrossed and their focus just shifts. And I think that that's what's happening because they've been painting now for a few moments. But before I begin, I wanted to share a quote. And some of you, if you've been doing the children's yoga, you would have heard this in one of the classes that I taught. But this is coming from Pete the Cat's Groovy Guide to Life. I just can't help but not bring a book into anything I do because as a former librarian, books are just so important to me. So this quote is from Pablo Picasso, who is a very famous artist. And he says, "Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up." So true. And then Pete the Cat says, "It's cool to color outside the lines." So I'll just show you Pete the Cat. And I don't know about you, but that was something I heard, and I remember hearing it when I was in grade 2, that I needed to color within the lines. And I'm happy that this is no longer the trend, that teachers and people that work with children are more open to just allowing children to create and create in a variety of different ways. So I brought some samples of things that we've been making during the pandemic. So we created these piñatas to represent the COVID virus. And we created 3 of these as a family, and we've been smashing them and giving them to medical staff to smash as well. So this is the last, and that's paper mache. So this is not the medium we'll be practicing in today, but just a really interesting technique. This used a balloon, old newspaper, and then you just make a paste with flour and water and layer that on. And then once you get the shape you want, then you can add on other details. So these little virus, and I've forgotten the word, it starts with a D. I can't remember what they're called. But these are just made with recycled envelopes from the mail and egg cartons, and then we just painted it. So this is a sample of something that can be created. And another item, again, recycling is a big theme for me as a mom and as a small business owner. Anytime you can use a product and upcycle it and turn it into something else. So I'm wondering how many people recognize this. This is a record and also a piece of art. It's a masterpiece that's been turned into a mandala. So this has been painted with acrylics, and then a Sharpie's been used to draw the lines across. So just to show you a number of things that can be created, just hang that there. Also using things like pencil crayons and things like your hands. So this is a sketch where you just draw your hand and then you fill in just random little shapes in your hand with different colors. And then you can take other colors and just trace around. Really, it's just an exercise in creating, and I find when you do this with a group of kids, everybody looks different, and then it's really fun at the end to have the kids go around, walk around and show them, and then they can, you know, see what's common, what's different, how many right hands are in the group, how many left hands are in the group. So that's a fun thing. Another drawing that I really like is just something really simple, like pen on paper. So this is a marker on a piece of construction paper. And this was done by a really young child in grade 3. And then I have some sort of more modern type things. I know I've been seeing lots of things trend with little gemstones and things. So this is something you can pick up, and it's a llama, but it was sticky. My 9-year-old did this, and then you glue on all these little things to bedazzle it. So this was just a kit that you can pick up at a store. There's other things, like just to keep in line with talking about pencil crayons, because they are so transportable. They can go in a backpack, you can take them to the park, you can take them if you go canoeing or camping. It's okay if they get a little wet, but you can do things like just filling in all sorts of pre-made sheets. I also really like to bring white sheets with me. And that's just so that you're not stifling anybody's creativity. And so oftentimes these pre-made coloring books have the option of coloring on the sheet or coloring on the back. So just making sure that you've got options for young people so that they can be creative and do whatever they're feeling is going to serve them best in that moment. So pencil crayons are lovely. Another thing that's really fun is taking a piece of wood, and maybe you can ask an adult for help. So just a piece of wood from the wood pile, and you just cut it nice and thin. So that's about 1/2 inch. It could be thicker or thinner depending on what you want to do with it. And then just simply taking some of your acrylic paints and painting an image on it. And so this is one that my daughter did a number of years ago, and it just has a beautiful northern sky and an Inukshuk. And then it was finished with some glitter. I'm not sure if the glitter is transferring on the Zoom video, but that's an option of things that we can create. And then I'm just going to share, like, this is a sample of a watercolor, and this was actually painted on a canoe trip. And so the inspiration, I was actually looking at this river, I saw that sky and those trees, and then I imagined us in the canoes coming down the river. And again, watercolors are great to take out on the land because they just don't take up a lot of space. Watercolor paper, you actually paint it when it's wet. So to start this, I actually dipped my paintbrush into the river and then wet the paper when it was white. And then I began to paint with my watercolors. Yeah, so this is another sample of things you can do. And I wasn't sure really how to sort of plan for this if we'd have kids calling in or families calling in. So I have samples of things, and I thought we could just go through them and paint one. So this is one that I thought might be fun to do. I really find it enjoyable to take inspiration from nature. So I love things that include elements of nature. This is flowers, and there's some buttons and some ribbons glued on to make it 3-dimensional. And again, this is one that that my youngest daughter made, and it includes some watercolors, some pastels, buttons, ribbon. Yeah, so really fun. I'm just going to show you 2 more, and then we'll pick one and paint it. But this is one, again, just some flowers, and it is painted on a sheet of the local newspaper. So you don't always have to have art paper. You can find an object, like an old newspaper, and paint on that, or a record, or you can even paint a glass or a bottle. All sorts of things can be upcycled into art. And there's one last one that I wanted to share before we begin painting, and this is one of my favorites. So this was made by my eldest daughter when she was 10 years old, and she actually made the piece of paper which is a whole other fun process to go through making your own paper. And then she painted the scene with the 2 ptarmigan. And then she went on a hike and found objects to include. So she found some sticks and glued the sticks on in the places where the ptarmigan branches would be. So first she painted them, and then with a hot glue gun, she glued them in place. And then just bedazzled the ptarmies with some feathers. But again, you can incorporate all sorts of found objects. You could glue pine cones. You could glue leaves as well. There's lots of things you can do with the objects you find in nature, even little pebbles and things. So if you're using heavier objects, you need to change your glue from maybe a white craft glue to a hot glue gun. And then just a note on hot glue guns, always get assistance from an adult, or make sure you're using a cold glue gun. There's different types. There's ones that are really, really hot and some that are cooler. So for today, I thought we might take our inspiration, because I look outside my window here and I see clouds, and I'm wishing for sun. So I thought maybe we could attempt to paint a little painting sort of like this. And so to begin, we're just going to choose our colors. And again, I like to challenge and just be open to colors. Like, we don't always have to assume that the sky is blue. When you're painting, you can make the sky red, or you can make it purple. Just like trees don't always have to be green, they could be pink. So just challenging those ideas we have about things having to look a certain way, and or having to look the same as the sample piece. So if we let go of that right away, then that tends to make things a bit easier for us. So to begin, we're just going to take a pencil and just draw in some sort of lines that would represent your landscape. And if you're at home, actually look out your window and see or imagine what your landscape looked like the last time you were out on the land and hiking about, or camping, or even just draw one of your favorite places. And we know that the northern landscape is very different. I was born in Nunavik, and I know that the trees there are very small, and the landscape is very different than when you travel to the southern part of the Northwest Territories, where the trees get bigger and the landscape changes as well. And if you're over in the Decho region, maybe you have some mountains if you're in Nahanni Butte and things like that. So choose your space, choose your colors, and then to get yourself set up, I like to use recycled plastic lids as the basins for our paints. And make sure that you have your tools, so some paint brushes, so different sizes for the job. And I like to use recycled, shirts and things that are not going to be worn anymore, can't be passed on. So we make our own little rags out of those, and we can use those to keep our space clean. You'll need a glass of water to rinse your brushes in. And then you need your paint colors. So again, if this is our inspiration, just maybe choose, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors. So if you want to sort of follow along with this, that's 6 colors that you would choose, but you're completely free to choose whatever you'd like to do. And just to talk about the different techniques that we see in this painting. So down here, we did a little technique where after we painted, we stuck on some of the bubble wrap and then pulled it off. So that's why it has this sort of honeycomb look. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. Here, we just used a fork or a sharp edge to just sort of scratch off some of the paint while it was still wet. And then up here, we used like a piece of paper towel, or you can use your rag, and you just pull off some of the paint. And then again, up in the sky, this was a fork that was used and just dragged through the paint to create that sort of edge. And you can see that around this, it has a white edge. And to do that, you just simply take some masking tape and you tape your paper down, and you can tape it to whatever you have to paint. So let me see. I need to grab, where did my thing go? Be right back. So my makeshift easel is going to be, this is a supply box that used to hold all the pencil, crayons, and paints, and it's been turning into an art project. Not finished yet, but you know, anything can be repurposed and painted. So we're going to tape our sheet down. So it could be to a piece of cardboard or a piece of wood. And so you just want your piece of tape to be about how is the best way to sort of describe that? So you want to sort of make sure it's straight, so it's not going, you know, on a diagonal, and just about, say, a finger in, like a fingernail in, so about that distance. And then we're just going to continue to do that on all of the edges. A little bit of setup. Oh, and we should probably talk about setting up your workspace too. So if you're painting outside, probably less work needs to be done in setting that up, because you might be sitting on the grass, sitting under a tree or something. But if you're painting at the dining room table where everybody eats their food, you probably want to put down some sort of protection. So we have here at home just one of those plasticized tablecloths. So any water or paint can easily just be wiped off. I know that will be appreciated by the adults in the home. I appreciate it as a mom. So, and just taking your time, and if the tape isn't in the right place before you stick it down, you can move it. So holding with one finger and then placing it down. And you just want to try and get them as straight as you possibly can, so that when you remove the paint at the end of your painting, that you have sort of straight edges that go all the way around. And you can choose the thickness. So whatever, really whatever you feel like today. So let's see, to choose the colors, I'm going to begin with some blue. I'm going to start with blue on the ground. So I know some people might be thinking, well, why not green? You know, for grass. Why not blue, right? So you can take a pencil. Can you pass me the pencil there? Oh, it was just right on the edge of the table there. Thank you very much. So what we can do now is we can draw in our lines, or you can just freehand it. Again, this is just a suggestion. So if you just want to do whatever,
Can't use any at night.
you can do that. So I'm just going to draw a line from one edge to the other.
Yeah, how long have you been playing already?
There's one. There's two. Maybe this one I'm just going to do a little bit more zigzaggy, right? See what happens. And then I'm going to have a look at it and see if maybe I want some more, or maybe that's enough. If I want to put a sun, or maybe this is going to be a moon, maybe the full strawberry moon, I'm going to add that in. And you can trace a circle from an object that you have, a glass, or you can just freehand it. I really like freehand. I like when things aren't totally perfect. So I'm just going to hold this back, make sure I'm on camera, and I'm just going to draw a circle. And these are just my pencil lines, so they don't have to be perfect. They're just a guide. So I can change that as I begin to paint. The pencil may not show up that well on the video, but there's my beginning. And so I've made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots that would need paint. So I could look at that and go, well, maybe I want to add in one more thing. Maybe I'm going to add in sort of a mountainy type or a hill type shape. I'm just going to go like that. and pull that off. There we go. So once you get this, the way you feel like you like it and you're ready to paint, and if you don't like these, you can erase them and begin again and enter, flip, and paint on the other side. So now to begin painting, we're using a sheet of watercolor paper. So I like to just begin by dipping my paintbrush into a glass of water. Again, I think one of the kids made this glass. So I dip it in the water and then onto my rag just to take off the excess, and then just brushing across the paper just to get the paper sort of wet here. And that just gives us a little more time to play with our paints before they dry. So there we go. And now I'm going to begin to paint. So I'm going to take my larger paintbrush. I'm going to dip it in my water, dab it on my rag, and then take up some paint. And then I'm just going to begin to paint my first little space that I drew with my pencil. And so you can practice different techniques. You can go nice and long. You can do these little crisscross sort of patterns. And you can trace your line. And this is where you can change that shape of the line. If you want it to be bigger or smaller. And so something I didn't mention was when you're taking your paint, take a little bit of paint, because you can always take more, but you can't ever put any back in the tube. It's just like toothpaste. So once it's out, it needs to be used or it's going to be wasted. So, and I know art supplies are becoming more and more challenging to find. So we want to make sure we use them sparingly. And you can do 1 coat or 2 coats of paint. So there's my first coat of my blue. I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to move on to my next color. So for my next color, I'm going to choose, girls, can you pass me a yellow and a green and the purple? Thank you. We're just all sharing paints here. All right, so my next color, I'm feeling green. I'm loving all the colors of the grass turning green and Yellowknife and the little buds turning green on the trees. And then I'm going to take a different paintbrush just to experiment. And so I'm going to use one that's just a little bit different. That's pointy. The one I used for the blue was a flatter. And once you're done with your paintbrush, you always want to make sure it's sitting in some water. So just a little glass of water. And that's so the paint doesn't dry in the brush. You want to put them in the water and then you can take them and clean them and let them dry. So I'm going to do the same thing, dip the brush in the water, dab it on my rag, and then take up some of my paint. And same sort of process. You can draw large lines or little lines. And you can choose to leave white space as well if you like white space. And if you make a mistake, like I just dabbed up here out of the line, that's okay, because I control this process and I can make this bigger. And if you make a mistake that you kind of want to erase, you can wait till it's dry and you can add another color over top. You could add white to sort of bring it back to the white of the paper. The trick is that the paint has to be completely dry or else it will blend and the colors will become a new color together. All right, tracing my lines. And I'm going to take a little more over here. How's it going over there, girls?
Good.
Good.
Almost some benches.
Lovely. All right. So there we go. There's our green. And of course, you'd have this turned and you'd be painting it, looking at it. And if you tape on a box, you can have it sitting up or you can have it lying on the table. And another note is the light you're painting in kind of makes a difference too. You'll see things differently if you have natural light as opposed to if you're painting in a room with a lamp or something. So seeing things outside is always really nice. My favorite place is to just go outside and paint. Why not? And it doesn't have to be perfect between the two colors. There's a little bit of white showing and everything. That's okay, because we're going to trace that out after with the black. All right, I'm feeling like maybe I'm gonna go a little purple here for the next shape. And I'm going to just clean off that blue paintbrush just by dabbing it in the water here. So just dabbing it up and down, and you'll see the water goes blue as the paint comes out. And then just tap it off on the edge, dab it onto that cloth to take out some of the water. And then we'll take up some purple onto our paintbrush. And then we can just trace that line. And we just keep making our way down. The thing I find interesting is how quiet the house becomes, or the camp or the space that we're painting. I'm also a volunteer with Girl Guides, and including art in all of the things we do is really important. The girls that come to Sparks and Brownies and Girl Guides and Pathfinders, they all love making things, being creative. It's an important part of their participation and attendance. And so when we take the girls camping, we make sure we bring our craft bins along too, so that the girls can engage in, you know, being creative while out camping. All right, so let's take a look at that. And again, you can look and see if there's any space that needs a little more paint. Fill it in, and you can always come back and touch these up as they dry, because sometimes things take on a different look when the paint dries. So, and you can see I didn't bring the paint all the way out because this is where the tape is. So the masking tape is right there. And then it's the box. So there we go. There's some texture, and you can dab your paintbrush as well to create some texture. And now just to sort of talk about that texture relief before our paint's totally dry. So I'm going to use, this is a piece of sponge and it's dry right now. So I'm going to use this and start dabbing at the purple that I just painted, and I'm going to remove and pull off some of the paint. And if it's not coming off enough, okay, there's some coming off on here. If I don't like that technique, another technique I can do is take up a different color. Like I'm thinking I might take up some white in a bit. I need to let this dry first. And then I can dab it with a clean end of the sponge and then tap on to the purple once the purple's dry. Otherwise, I'll blend the white and the purples together. And then I think that might kind of look like some snow on some mountains. So we'll come back to this. We'll let this dry, and I'm going to move on to my next color, which I'm open to suggestions. What do we think? Should I maybe do yellow? I think I'm going to need some red. Yeah, I'm thinking red. Thank you. My lovely assistants are assisting in passing the paints. Oh, maybe I'm rethinking this. This is kind of empty. There we go. All right. All right, so from here, I am going to clean off my paintbrush. Come on in. And I'm going to, I'm gonna make a decision here. I was thinking I'd do red and yellow, but I'm not sure. I'm thinking I might want to paint my red up here. What do you think? Yeah, I'm thinking that. I'm going to take the red and I'm going to jump up to the top half here. And I'm going to see if I like a red sky. And so you don't have to follow in the exact order. Sort of my, maybe a mountain range sort of shape there. I'm going to paint around my moon or sun. There we go. Just fill in those edges. All right. So let's just finish this off here. And remembering you can just sort of go any which way with your paintbrush. That leaves a technique too. You know, you can see your brush, the brush strokes. And then here, I'm going to try that scratching technique. So I'm going to use the back of the paintbrush, or you could use a plastic fork or something. And I'm just going to draw with it. And then as I get paint on here, I can just dab that on the rag and remove it. But isn't that a neat technique? Like just creating these sort of lines. And if you don't like it, you simply just paint over it again. But isn't that an interesting little sort of process? I'm liking that quite a bit. I think what I'm going to do is incorporate some of that down into the green. But I think what I'm going to try there is using the end of the paintbrush to add the paint and see how that goes. So I'm going to add my yellow in. So, I'm going to actually just dab my yellow right on to my little sun or moon space. I haven't decided if this is an evening in the kitchen. Yeah, it's just down on the bin behind you on the floor. Sorry, just getting asked by the kids for more paper. I guess they're finishing and wanting to move on to other things and start new projects. It's on the kitchen counter. I'll get it after. It's on the windowsill mirror. All right, so I just put my dab of yellow right there. And then I'm just going to move my paint around, tracing that out. And so if you haven't waited like me, you're a little impatient, or if there's a time limit, I haven't let the red fully dry. So some of the red I'm picking up with my paintbrush, and now it's blending in to my sun or moon. But I actually kind of like it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up a little red on my paintbrush because I still have red on my little tray here. So I'm just going to pick a little up, sort of like that. And I'm just going to bring it in, and I'm just going to bring it to the center, and I'm going to move around like so and just pull it out. So I think that's kind of an interesting little technique. So there's a little three-dimensional, the paint's nice and thick. So this is going to take more time to dry. This is really starting to take shape. And next, I am going to finish off my last color. Can I have that aqua blue color there? Thank you. I'm really feeling like that will be a nice color to add in here. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that, place it onto my little plastic lid like so. And so another note about painting is paint gets everywhere. So you want to make sure you're wearing a shirt that you're okay with if you get some paint on that. And making sure either your sleeves are pulled back or that you're not wearing long sleeves. All right, I'm taking up some of that aqua color. And I've chose the smaller brush because there's a little bit more detail work to sort of maneuver. So I find a nice way to get around the shapes is to just sort of paint those first and pull the paint up. And remember, we're gonna go back and we're gonna go over this with some black or another color and just trace outer lines to really define the space. And the more paint you use, the longer this is going to take to dry, but that's okay. We have options. We can let things dry outside in the sun, or we can grab a hair dryer and we can use a hair dryer to dry things a little faster. So actually, I think I'm going to just keep filling this in, pulling any of the excess paint away. And already I think this is like really taken shape. There's a lot of interesting things happening in here. I'm gonna trace my line. And if the top color is dry, I can choose to trace that line up into the red and make this little mountainy shape just a little bit bigger. All right, finish filling this in. And almost there. How's it going, girls?
Good.
Good. Did you find that paper on the floor? So it's just behind you.
Oh, no, but the cardboard to put under it.
Oh, we don't have any more of that.
Okay, so I'll just see this.
Yeah, just grab the lid. There's a plastic lid and you can use that. All right, so this is kind of looking the way I like it. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this green area down here. And I'm going to add in a different color. So I'm going to clean off my paintbrush first. Put it in the water. And I'm going to switch and I'm going to grab the bigger one. Because this time I'm not even going to use the brush. I'm going to use this end of the paintbrush. And I'm going to dab it into, what color should I use? I have a lot of red and I don't like wasting paint. So I'm just going to experiment. I'm going to dip this into the red to take some up like so. And then I'm just going to dab it onto the green area. So dip into the red, dab onto the green. Dip and dab. Dip and dab. And I can just keep doing this until I am feeling like I'm done. So these might be little strawberries or cranberries or different, I don't know. They could be all sorts of things. And you could use all different types of colors. I'm gonna do a few more of those. I'm feeling like maybe one more over here. And this is another interesting perspective. So I'm looking at it sort of from the top down because I'm painting this way, portrait as opposed to landscape. This would be landscape if you turned your sheet. But look at your painting as you go and turn it and just get an interesting perspective, one that you wouldn't see otherwise. Because who's to say this piece couldn't actually be turned and be upside down? Maybe this is the water. Maybe this is a reflection of a moon or sun. Maybe you want to add another moon or sun up here. I don't know. Maybe this isn't even a landscape anymore. Maybe this is just some squiggly lines, right? All right, so I have a lot of stuff happening there. Lots of paint drying. So again, before you would do this next step, which is adding the detail lines, and I'll just show you this again. So this is where we're going. You would make sure all of your paint was dry, but I'm going to skip ahead and I'm going to start adding in the black lines now. So is the black paint down over there? Can you just pass the black and the white down to me, please? Thank you. And the black is beside you there, Mira. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm just going to take a little bit of black. And you can use a larger plate, or you can have a couple of these little lids if you like. And now to do my detail work, I'm going to use a smaller paintbrush because I'll have more control with a smaller paintbrush if I use this as opposed to this. So this will be big lines, this will be little lines. All right, dip in the water, dab on our cloth, and then take up some of the paint. So a little bit of paint. And you're free, I didn't talk about this, but you're free to hold your paintbrush in whatever way is comfortable for you. So some people like to hold it sort of in the middle, closer towards the end of the brush. Some people like to hold it closer to the brush part of the brush. So it just depends what you're comfortable with. And even just experimenting, you know, see what kind of lines you can draw if you hold it really far. Because there are some artists that paint with not their hands. They paint with their mouth or they paint with their feet. So that could be something fun to try as well. So I've got my black loaded on my paintbrush. And now I'm just going to turn my piece around and I'm just going to trace between those lines and just create a little separation. And as you go, you might need to dab in your brush and take up some more paint. And you also have more control if you do little lines as opposed to try and go all the way across in one big line. And you can go back after, so just little lines. And this doesn't have to be perfect. If you make a mistake, you can just make your line a little bigger. And let's see. Here we go. So there's my first line. So the colors really begin to pop or separate. I'm going to go between the green and the purple now. And I'm just going to make that a little thicker, just so it shows better on camera. Now this is going to be fun, all these little zigzaggy things. So just bringing your paintbrush off and going up and down. So I find sometimes it's easier to go all in one direction, like so. And then you can flip and go in the other direction. But that's just a technique that I use. You can experiment. I find it easier for me. And I find it easier to take the paint from the center and pull it down as opposed to coming up, right? So just finishing those little lines. Hello, people coming home. All right, we're just about done. And I can see there that wasn't quite dry. So I'm taking up some of the turquoise now. I'm just going to leave it and I can go back over that in a few more minutes if I want. Just going to finish this last little line here. And I'm going to leave it painting upside down because that's kind of working for me. But you can flip it around if you want. And I think I'm going to turn it and have a look. And I think I'm just going to pull this little mountain. This is going to be a little mountain for me now. I'm going to pull it a little higher with the black. Just give it a bit more definition. There, I'm liking that. And last, I'm going to trace around the sun. So I actually have quite a bit of yellow there. So I'm going to trace closer to the red because I know that that'll be a bit drier than if I'm in the yellow. And again, just little lines, smaller lines. So you can do little small strokes like so. And then we'll just connect that. Did you find the glitter?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Could I have the glitter?
The lid's open. Okay.
And now, so I've made that really big and dark. Oh, glitter with an open lid. So I'm going to bedazzle this a little with some glitter. And while the yellow paint is still wet, because there's a lot of paint there, I'm just going to tap on some glitter. Here we go. And it tends to fall out like so. So I got a lot of glitter. I can tap my little box or painting to move it around, or you can blow on it. There we go. So I've got some glitter in there. And now I'm going to take that white. So it's always a really good idea to sort of look at things from far away and see if you're liking the way they're looking. So just hold it a little ways away or just set it somewhere, leave it for a few minutes and come back. And so I was talking about adding some white in with the sponge. So I'm going to grab my sponge and a clean edge of the sponge and my white paint. So now you can see my palette or my recycled little lid here is getting quite full of colors. Beautiful. So I'm going to take a clean edge and you can dampen the sponge a little, or you can try with it dry. It'll make two different sort of things. So first I'll show you what it looks like dry and then we'll wet it. So just a little bit of paint. I'm going to attempt to add sort of like some snow up in the in my hilltops. So I got a little paint loaded. And I'm going to say that these purple things are my mountains. So I'm just going to begin to sort of dab. And then I can use a drier edge. And I can dab and touch. And I know that my black isn't quite dry, so I'm just going to stay away from there. And then if I want to experiment, I can wet the sponge, squeeze it out, and I can try taking up a little more white and just adding a little more. So when it's wet, it just changes. It's a little bit more cloudy like. And if I start to feel like, oops, maybe I've added too much white, or maybe I'm not liking the way it's looking, because I still have the purple on my palette, I can go back and grab some of the purple now, and I can just go over top to sort of erase some. So I got a little black over there. I'm just going to erase it now by taking up some purple. And I'm just going to dab in there. Take up a little more. There we go. And I think that's looking kind of where I want it to be. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. But I think that kind of looks like some snow maybe on some mountains. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the edge of my paintbrush and I'm just going to add some more lines or details down in this blue here. So I'm going to take this end, I'm going to dip it into some white paint to load it up. And then I'm just going to begin to draw some little lines. And it won't get very far because the paint runs out sort of fast. But just taking it and just creating some little lines or some shapes. You could experiment and use different things here. You might have some old cutlery. The other thing that's really fun is using an old paintbrush, which we have. Would you actually pass me the paintbrush? Let's see what happens if we take the paintbrush.
What paper?
There's a paintbrush in with the brushes there. In the mason jar with the paintbrush or toothbrush. I'm saying the wrong thing. The toothbrush. The
I was like,
toothbrush. They're all paintbrushes. That made no sense. So this is an old baby toothbrush. So just taking this end, and now I'm just going to brush across the white paint with this end and just pull the paint across. And so if I'm not liking the way that's looking, because I still have blue on my sheet, I can load with a little bit of blue, and then I can just go across with that. So I'm taking the blue and I'm dragging it across. And painting with a with a toothbrush is a very different technique because the bristles are firmer. And so I just keep loading and moving the paint around. And the thing about painting with acrylic is you have a bit of time, but you don't have all the time in the world. So I'm going to add some more white up here because I feel like I want some white there, and I'm going to take some more blue. So by having blue and white loaded in my paintbrush now I'm going to make a new shade of blue, a lighter blue. And I think I'm going to stop there. So this is where we're at. This is sort of what we have. And now the really fun part is the reveal. So we get to pull off these little pieces of tape and see what our little masterpiece looks like. So there's 1 inch. Oops. And sometimes the masking tape will pull the paper a little and give you a little sort of rougher edge, which actually can look kind of interesting too. And now, there we go. There is our finished little masterpiece. So this was our inspiration piece. And this is our finished piece. So just having fun with your painting and doing whatever comes to you, whatever feels fun, having fun with it. Girls, do you want to share any of your paintings that you've done so far? All right, so oops, this is one that was completed. This is a beautiful, beautiful tree, a cherry blossom tree. All those pink cherry blossoms. I've yet to see one of these in real life. Did you want to share yours? No? Okay, and that's fine. Sometimes we paint only for ourselves and they're not for sharing, and that's okay. And other times they may be masterpieces that you want to put on your bedroom wall or door, or on your or on your fridge. Yeah, or even, you know, give to somebody. It can be really fun, especially during these times, to maybe spontaneously give a piece of art that you've made to a neighbor or friend. You could just put it on their doorstep. Maybe just put a little stone on so it doesn't blow away. And you can also write a little message on the back. So we don't always have to be attached to the things we create. We can create them just for the sake, for the process of making something. And then we can actually share them with other people too. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining this painting session, this little art online. I'd like to thank Aboriginal Sports Circle for sponsoring. And I just encourage you to continue to create. Find a medium that you like to work within, whether it's painting or beading or paper mache, and just do it. Do it, have fun, and enjoy the process. Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye from my house.